What's up, Star Trek fans? Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Picard Season 3, Episodes 1 through 6, turn away now. This is Star Trek Late Night, and this will be a podcast that you'll enjoy if you like long-form podcasts. Now, let me tell you something right off the bat. I appreciate criticism, and I do have some criticism for Season 3, but that being said, there's been some criticism that I think has just been over the top, and anybody who's mostly all critical of the season, I find suspect, and I enjoy listening to them. So we're going to listen to some of the critique of Episode 6 of Star Trek Picard Season 3, and I'm going to react to it in this long-form podcast view. And listen, so if you're a 5 to 10 minute YouTube video guy with a lot of ADD, this probably isn't going to be the video for you, but if you are into the long-form fun, then sit back and listen away as we go through some of the nitpickers out there, and I'll react to it. They've got some valid points, and I've got some problems too, but this season, for me, has been far better than Seasons 1 and 2 of Picard. I would never watch those seasons again, and I would never buy them on Blu-ray, but at this point, Season 3, you got me.
It'll give him decades before it catches up with him, so whatever. He has an overclocked brain. Seriously, she's a doctor. She should have been paying closer attention to her son. She never thought to scan him to make sure everything was okay. I mean, what kind of a doctor is she, let alone mother? I mean, just terrible. Apparently, she has him on drugs now, and so that'll give him decades before it catches up with him, so whatever. Jack is sitting...
So the argument has been that how did Beverly miss Jack's Irumodic syndrome? Now, first of all, it could be that this gets explained later at some point, and there's a real reason why that happened. But if it is just the reason we're given at this point, and by the way, I have not seen the other episodes, okay? I have not seen 8, 9, or 10. I haven't seen 8, 9, or 10. I have no idea what's going to happen there. And honestly, I don't think I've seen episode 7 either. So, but I definitely don't know the answer to this. But I will say that if it is not explained later, that's fine, because my explanation is simple. Beverly didn't find Picard's Irumodic syndrome as well until the last episode of the last season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. She didn't find his Irumodic syndrome until he basically was told about it from the future via Q, which I've always wondered if potentially that whole episode wasn't about Picard as much as Picard causing a problem, because if Q never went and told Picard about this, they wouldn't have even fired the tachyon emissions into the Devron system, right? I've actually always wondered about that chicken or the egg type of thing. But didn't Q cause the whole thing, really, when you think about it? So Q sets it in motion to make Picard set it in motion to then tell him that you're doing it, but isn't it your fault, Q? So maybe part of that whole thing was so that Q could help Picard find out that he has Irumodic syndrome so he could be prepared for it later in life. However, that never really comes to fruition because in the end, because of Season 1 of Picard, there really isn't anything that changes much of his life based on the Irumodic syndrome. Now, if it had made Beverly rush to Picard more to want to be lovers with him quicker because our time could run out and it's not worth holding on to this anymore, that's it, why fight this? Then it would make sense to further that, but it doesn't. That doesn't happen. Nothing happens with it, really, until Picard's really old and then eventually dies in Season 1 of Picard. So none of that makes any sense anyway, but the point is, after all the medical scans, after all the physicals, after the deep evaluations, simulated by Borg, so on and so on and so on, they never discovered the Irumodic syndrome in Picard. So it is actually plausible that Beverly would miss it in her son. Now, should she maybe have gone to the extra lengths to do it, and maybe she should have been paranoid that, oh man, what if we passed on Irumodic syndrome to Jack? Let me check him for it. I can understand that argument, but it's so rare, and I don't remember now if you're born with it. I think that's Shell-off syndrome, which Picard also has Shell-off syndrome, which is something that happens as a very young baby and boy. And that, I think, runs in the family. I can't remember if it's Shelloff syndrome or Irumodic syndrome, but I think Irumodic is very rare, but I could be mistaken.
Jack's visions, nightmares, etc. Apparently, he inherited Irumodic syndrome from his father. All this time, when Beverly saw him doing this shit when he was a little kid, he had his imaginary friends, and she just thought he was gifted. And now it turns out he has an overclocked brain. Seriously, she's a doctor. She should have been paying closer attention to her son. She never thought to scan him to make sure everything was okay. I mean, what kind of a doctor is she, let alone mother? I mean, just terrible. Apparently, she has him on drugs now, and...
Yeah, what a terrible mother. Because she missed a super rare, insane, diagnosis of Irumodic syndrome. You know what I mean? What a terrible mother. Like, what a terrible mother. You know what I mean? Can you imagine imagine this. Your husband, they find out at 40 years old that your husband has a super insane, rare, gene defective syndrome or problem with his heart valve or something or other that you can only find out by swallowing beryllium or something and then taking a backwards X-ray scan. And your husband has it, and crazy enough, it's a surprising diagnosis. Then he lives to be 80 and eventually dies. Well, now you have a son, years later, and he's born, and, he's evaluated as a baby for everything you'd be evaluated for in the future for the most part. And he seems perfectly healthy and great. But you never go to the lengths to check him for that weird deficiency that your husband had. Now, maybe that's an oversight, and maybe you should check that out. But even in medicine nowadays, we don't exactly check deeply for a lot of things, although we probably should. But does that make you a terrible mother? No, but it's an oversight that you made and an error you probably should have figured out before. So I think there's some merit to this bit of criticism, should it actually hold true that this is really what happened with Beverly and Jack, assuming this is real. And this isn't some kind of fabrication by Beverly, or this is some thing going on we don't know about. But to say she's a terrible mother and she would have picked up on this, I don't think so, because she didn't pick up on it in Captain Picard after all his medical examinations and all these other things. So it is apparently a very, very hard and rare syndrome to diagnose. In fact, you know what? Let's listen to the exact diagnosis by Beverly. Let's hear it.
Luke, I scanned you for evidence of Irumodic syndrome, as you suggested. There wasn't any. But I did find a small structural defect in the parietal lobe.
A defect that you hadn't noticed before?
It's the kind of defect that would only show up on a level 4 neurographic scan.
Ah. So Beverly could have done a level 4 neurographic scan on her son, potentially.
It could cause you to be susceptible to several kinds of neurological disorders, including Irumodic syndrome. Now, it's possible for you to live with this defect for the rest of your life without developing a problem. Or even if you do...
So, here's the other thing, too. It could have developed... This is apparently a very hard thing to diagnose, because even when it's not there, it can be there. And when you diagnose it, or when you speculate a diagnosis for it, there can be no evidence of it. So this is an extremely hard thing to diagnose. So knowing this, you should be able to put together in your mind that, you know what? I don't need to think about this twice, because this is an extremely hard diagnosis to make. So the criticism that Beverly should have known about Jack's Irumodic syndrome, it's a valid question. But if this is a problem with the season for you, then you're going to have a lot of problems with a lot of science fiction shows. Dare I say, you will never be able to watch a science fiction show, maybe ever, if every single little thing like this is going to bother you. Now, that being said, I appreciate this discussion and I've enjoyed it with you guys. I'm going to continue doing more of these. And please let me know in the comments down below if you've actually watched this entire video. What do you think about this situation? And also, would you prefer that I do videos like this in 20 to 30 minutes long or like 5 to 10 minute chunks released here or there? Or would you prefer an entire 1 to 2 hour podcast of me doing nothing but this? Please let me know in the comments what you'd prefer. I would like to know. There's more to come on nitpicking the nitpickers and getting to the bottom of the criticisms of, and some of them valid criticisms and questions that people have about Star Trek. Now, 60% of these, my headcanon fills in the blanks, and I'm easily able to continue watching the show because I go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And what I don't understand, my headcanon fills it in, and I have fun filling in the blanks for myself because if you were to fill in the blanks as a TV show, you would need about 300 episodes, and we just don't have time for that, do we? Now, Alex Kurtzman has a big announcement allegedly coming up soon. Hopefully that's good news. I am not convinced yet. Was Star Trek Picard Season 3 basically given up on by Kurtzman and everybody who said, oh boy, nobody really liked. Season 1 was the top. Season 1 was the best we were going to get because everybody was so excited and it was bad. And what are we going to do? Oh, well, Season 3, here, Terry Metalis, do whatever you want. This is fucking terrible. Do whatever you want, Terry. We don't even care. Give it to that Terry guy. But then Terry hits a home run. But now Kurtzman's plans were still to move on with something different. Will he now say, wait a minute, Terry took the pile of dog shit and turned it into a cake? Should we start serving up the cake, or are we still throwing the cake out like we were going to throw the dog shit out? I don't know. So that's where we're at right now with Star Trek, in my opinion. I don't know the answer. But to me, I think Terry Metalis has not had communication yet that you're killing it, we're going to do something. I don't think he's had that conversation yet, and I think it's going to take until the end of the season and maybe a little bit more for someone to reach out to him and say, you know what, let's do something further. Or the inevitably terrible, or potentially, inevitably is the wrong word, but potential terrible news of, hey, great job, thank you so much for that. You ended up turning Season 3 into something people really did enjoy. Thanks, man. We've got all these other plans, though, that we already made, so thank you, and we'll see you later. I hope that's not what happens. I hope to God that they've realized, wait a minute, this guy saved the season, like saved the whole thing. Like this guy made something out of nothing. You know, Season 1, I spent time analyzing the trends the other day of Seasons 1 and 2. Season 1, Season 1 lost an audience as it went on, but people were curious to see how it ended and to see what ended up happening. Maybe it got better. So Season 1 does this downward sort of trend, and then at the very end spikes up again because people wanted to see what could have happened. It also does a spike up because people would reoccurringly look and watch for the Riker part of Episode 10. Season 1's first episode did really well because all the TNG and original fans were back to see what was going to happen. And slowly after 10 episodes, most people went, oh my God, this is trash. Now, the new Star Trek fans, and I call them new Star Trek fans, or the very casual Star Trek fans who like Discovery, or the new Discovery fans, those people just seem to like everything, but they're a small amount of people. So you have all these different sort of things going on. In my opinion, only about 300,000 people watch Discovery. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. I don't have the hard numbers. But when you look at trailers on YouTube and videos watched on YouTube and illegal site viewership, and when you look at other trends and search trends and you really give it an honest look, it seems like there's about 300,000 people right now that are still Discovery fans. And it would appear that by the end of Season 2 of Picard Season 2, there were only about 500,000 Picard fans. Now, a lot of those people were Discovery fans because they'll watch anything, and a lot of them were TNG fans hoping for the best who were disappointed. And then there are some TNG fans that also still like everything or that will watch everything no matter what. And I guess I'm one of them because I watched it. It was just terrible. But in Season 3, it seems like there's been an uptick because the trend, instead of trending downward, around Episode 6 is ticking upward. The trends are starting to loop up a little bit. During Episode 6 of Season 3, when usually that tick upward didn't start happening in the other seasons until Episode 10. So there is something different happening. But how much of the audience was lost? Because after Season 2 of Picard, the Picard audience shrunk from about 500,000, 600,000 people down to about 400 to 390,000 people. But I would say that in Season 3, it looks like, potentially, that you may have 1 million people to 800,000 people on board with Picard Season 3. And that's a spike up that I gotta believe that is, if it's happening, that Paramount is going to take note of. You know what I mean? If your viewership grew a couple, and it may not be 800 to 1 million, it's a rough guesstimate. Maybe it's only 600,000, 700,000, but that's still an increase compared to Season 2. Season 2 trended downward, and it crashed and burned. Season 3 has been trending slightly downward like most shows eventually do after the first few episodes, but then it held steady, and now it's starting to do this uptick that the other seasons didn't do. And trust me, I spent time analyzing Google Analytics. I didn't use some fake, stupid website. I've seen some people tweeting out this website that's bullshit. As far as I'm concerned, is bullshit. I compared Seasons 1 and 2 during their runtime periods to the runtime period currently of Season 3. Trust me, it was a lot of stupid work. And with somebody like me I need a third job to keep my house right now, and I barely have any money. And I spent all this time analyzing this crap. It's really stupid. But anyway, that being said, more videos coming soon, and I will continue to do this. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below. Please leave a like. And if you really like what I do and you want to support me financially, paypal.me/Joe Cronin Show or patreon.com/Joe Cronin Show. This is Star Trek Late Night, my new channel, which is very small and very new. But make no mistake about it, with my 75 million views on YouTube, I am ready to take on Star Trek now in the tiny little corner of this part of YouTube. Thanks to everybody who watched, and I will see you soon. And if you want to see my Data tribute, it's a beautiful tribute. I used a couple of other tribute video ideas, and I put together a custom, I edited the whole thing myself. I put it together all myself. I took some new music. I rearranged some things, and I made something that hopefully I'll probably make you tear up, hopefully. So go follow me on Twitter right now to view that video, which is up, and retweet it and like it and whatever you want to do. Spoilers are there at MetaWorld Online. And I actually took that name from somebody else who had a Twitter account, and they gave me their Twitter account so I could have a Twitter account. And so don't ask me why it's at MetaWorld Online, but it is at MetaWorld Online. Follow me on Twitter or search Joe Cronin Show producer, whatever you want to do. All right, now I'm really going, so you should really start leaving a comment down below. Here's some other videos you might enjoy. Ooh, my seat.